Hello and welcome to another fun-filled edition of Adam's Music Box, where today I want to talk about one of the finest pianists ever, and he's widely regarded as such. But I sort of consider him the first pianist that really sounded modern within that framework of this thing we broadly and sometimes vaguely call jazz. Now, by the time Art Tatum was born in 1909, there was already radically interesting stuff going on with piano composition. Scriabin, one of the great composers of all time for orchestra and solo piano, had some of the most sophisticated solo piano works ever. A lot of the great French composers who are known for their orchestrations also composed amazingly for solo piano using really interesting counter melody, really heterodox ideas about harmony that sort of became the norm for a while, but they were really coming out of left field. Thinking of people like Debussy and Ravel. And Art Tatum grew up in this weird and wonderful and wild, I sound like Johnny Carson, era where piano composers were doing really interesting things that deviated both from the norms of sort of classical and romantic piano, as well as from the sort of more folkish and earthy type of piano that one would see outside of classical circles. Now, in some ways, you could call Art Tatum one of the godfathers of jazz piano, but in another sense, he existed outside that realm because he didn't sort of restrict himself to the harmonic cliches associated with the what we in hindsight call the trad jazz of the 1920s. He was someone who, yeah, he incorporated that. He incorporated blues-based scales. He incorporated traditional classical themes. He incorporated some of the cutting-edge stuff going on among all of the classical composers I just mentioned. And through it all, he was someone who was just endlessly listenable. And I mean, I always have to put this disclaimer on for people who assume all jazz is very dissonant or very, something that only musicians can really appreciate. You can throw those stereotypes out the window when we're talking about Art Tatum because everything he played was just so wonderfully listenable and accessible while still sort of smacking you over the head with extreme virtuosity. And one thing that always strikes me about him is I always used to think he lived a long time because he straddled so many different eras. He was prominent in the trad jazz era, in the big band era, in the sort of swinging combo era, the birth of bebop, modal jazz, and its sort of emergence. And yet he only lived, what was it? He died in his early 50s, I think. Let me quickly, no. 47, so even younger than that. And yet, because he was so prolific in his output of recorded material and in terms of his concertizing, he really was someone that was a monumental force in jazz and in solo piano in any genre in that first half of the 20th century. Luckily, a lot of his stuff, because he was prolific, is on your Spotify's and your Hootify's and your Whatify's. Definitely check it out. Art Tatum is not one to miss if you haven't given him a listen before. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Take care.